Have you ever wondered why some teams just catch fire and succeed, while others, well, they just fizzle out? It's not luck, and it's not random. There's actually a natural life cycle, kind of like seasons, that every big project or team goes through. And if you can understand these seasons, you can learn how to navigate them.
So let me ask you this, and I want you to really think about it. Is your team a machine? Predictable inputs, predictable outputs? Or is it more like a living thing? Something that grows, that adapts, that's part of a bigger, messier ecosystem? Because that little shift in how you see things, well, it changes everything.
Okay, so let's get into it. The source material for this whole idea is focused on something called a Project Management Office, or a PMO. Basically, they're the people who make sure projects get done right across a whole company. But here's the thing, and this is super important. It doesn't matter if you're in a PMO or not. This framework applies to any strategic team. A data science group, an innovation lab, you name it. The principles are totally universal.
Right. Your team isn't some isolated island. You're constantly dealing with stakeholders, you're bumping up against the company culture, you're fighting for budget. It's exactly like a plant in a garden. It's survival, it's health, it all depends on the environment around it. So, let's see what that looks like in practice. Every big, successful thing starts small. And these first two stages, they're all about getting the foundation right. It's about preparing the soil and planting the seed. And I'm telling you, if you get this part wrong, even the most brilliant idea is basically dead on arrival. All right, so first up is the potential scenario. This is that classic situation where everyone agrees, hey, that's a great idea. The ground seems fertile, but, and this is a huge but, the organization's culture just isn't ready for it. The soil is hard, it's not been tilled. Pushing forward right now would be like trying to plant a prize-winning rose in a patch of concrete. It's just not going to work.
And the big temptation here is to just charge ahead and launch, right? But that's a classic mistake. The real work in this potential stage is the stuff nobody sees. It's about patiently educating people, building up some basic skills across the company, and just getting the environment ready. It is all about tilling that soil before you even think about planting.
So, after all that patient groundwork, you finally get to the kickoff scenario. The culture is starting to get it, you've got the green light from leadership, and the conditions are finally right. Now is the moment. Now you can officially plant that seed and get things started.
So what do you do here? This is all about building a solid launch pad. You're getting that executive support nailed down, you're drawing really clear lines around what your team is going to do, and maybe more importantly, what it's not going to do. You're putting together that core group and just hitting the ground running to build allies. Every single move here is a brick in the foundation of your future.
Okay, now we get to the good part. These are the stages that every single one of us is aiming for. This is where all that initial sweat and hard work starts to really pay off, and your little sapling starts growing into something strong. So after that successful launch, you hit the growing scenario. Think of it like a young tree just hitting a growth spurt. You're scaling up, you're taking on more, and here's the key part. You're delivering your first real, tangible results. You're starting to bear fruit, and yeah, people are definitely starting to notice.
And see how the focus has shifted? It's not about starting anymore, it's about sustaining. This is where the rubber meets the road. You got to prove that your early wins weren't just beginner's luck. And that means you have to be obsessive about measuring your impact, growing your team's skills, and constantly communicating your wins to keep everyone on board.
And then you hit the peak, the thriving scenario. This is it, the holy grail. Your team is now that big, strong, healthy tree that everyone in the organization looks up to. You're firing on all cylinders, your stakeholders are happy, and you're seen as an absolutely essential part of the company. This is what we're all working towards.
But, and this is a massive but, don't get complacent here. Thriving isn't a destination you arrive at, it's more like a high-wire act. You can't just stop and admire the view. To stay up there, you have to be vigilant, keep your standards incredibly high, and always be pushing for what's next, so you don't become yesterday's news.
Of course, what goes up can also come down. No season lasts forever. So we have to talk about the flip side. This is the cautionary part of the story, and it's all about learning to spot the warning signs that your beautiful, thriving tree might be starting to wilt.
And wow, look at this. This shows you just how quickly the tide can turn. On the left, everything's great. High fives all around. But look at the right. The crisis doesn't start with a big explosion. It starts with subtle stuff. A few more complaints, efficiency starts to dip, and then, you're suddenly not being invited to those important meetings anymore.
That is a massive flashing red light.
So yeah, that's the crisis scenario, and the quote here is perfect. Your team is being deprived of nutrients, things like support, your budget, strategic purpose. And if you don't do something about it fast, that slow slide is about to turn into a complete freefall.
And that free fall, that's the decline scenario. This is when things get really bad. People aren't just whispering anymore. They're openly questioning why your team even exists. And as you can see, trying to pull out of this nosedive at this point, well, it takes a Herculean effort. We're talking a near impossible task.
And if that Herculean effort isn't enough, you hit collapse. It's game over. End of the road, the confidence is gone, the resources are gone, your influence is zero, the organization basically sees you as dead weight, the tree is withered and fallen.
Okay, that sounds pretty bleak, I know. But it's not totally hopeless. For each of these downward stages, there's a specific survival playbook. In a crisis, you gotta act like a doctor, diagnose the problem, and re-engage with your stakeholders, like yesterday. In decline, you need a massive, all-in turnaround plan. And in collapse, honestly, sometimes the smartest move is to manage the shutdown with grace and make sure you capture all the lessons learned for next time.
But here's the cool part. An ending doesn't always have to be the end. Even after a total collapse, there is a path to renewal. This is the resurgence scenario. The chance to be reborn, like a phoenix from the ashes, but way smarter this time around.
And this isn't just about trying again. It's about starting over intelligently. It means you need a powerful new vision based on everything that went wrong before. You absolutely have to get a powerful executive sponsor in your corner. Then, you focus on being radically transparent to rebuild that shattered trust. And finally, you have to go after the root cause, the cultural problems that doomed you in the first place. All right, so that's the full life cycle, from a tiny seed to ashes and maybe back again. Now for the most important part, using this. The real skill here is learning how to look around your own organization and figure out exactly what season you're in right now.
And remember, these shifts don't just happen overnight. They creep up on you, which is actually good news because it means you can spot them coming if you know what to look for. So think of this as your personal checklist. Ask yourself these questions about your team. Be brutally honest with the answers, and you'll know exactly where you stand.
So there you have it. We've walked through the entire ecosystem, from potential and kickoff to growing and thriving, and even through the dark woods of crisis, decline, and rebirth. So it all comes down to one simple but really challenging question. Take a good, hard, honest look at your work, your team, your project. What season are you in right now?